The webinar will begin in about 2 minutes. Please stay tuned. Good afternoon and good morning to those of you on the West Coast. Thank you for joining us today. I would assume that if you're joining us for this webinar, that you have an interest in transparency, particularly in the online grocery shopping world. As you will hear today, consumers have a strong and growing interest in transparency. We will be exploring consumer buying preferences and habits as consumers are flocking to online grocery now more than ever before. I'm joined today by two experts who will help us understand what the findings from our research mean for the food industry. I'm Steve Markinson, Director of Research at FMI. I will lead us through the data and information today. I'm excited to be joined by Tim Whiting, who leads the marketing efforts at Label Insight. Tim has worked in technology his whole career, most recently working with leading brands such as AT&T, United Airlines, Starwood Hotels, Avis, Discover Card, Costco, and Walmart to improve their digital customer experience. Tim will be providing his unique perspective on the transparency trends we are seeing with consumers. Tim, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about Label Insight?
Hey, thanks, Steve. Happy to be here. For those of you listening that don't know, Label Insight is a product data provider that serves CPG brands and grocery retailers. We've got deep expertise in what I call foundational product transparency, and we're the market leader in Smart Label, and for many years have been a partner with FMI championing the value of product transparency. These days, though, in addition to supporting regulatory compliance and other transparency initiatives, we work on the e-commerce front to complement the operational product data systems of retailers and CPGs with rich product attribute metadata. In other words, we provide them product information related to the micro need states that are driving consumer purchase behavior. So in addition to things like product images and basic ingredient information, they have access to product characteristics such as gluten-free, keto-friendly, sustainable, or cruelty-free that can be provided to consumers to help them make better product choices. We think that our data, in terms of being the broadest, we have access to online consumer search data across retailers and know our database covers 99% of all consumer online queries. And we also think about our data as being the deepest. We identify 95% of the products that qualify for a given attribute like keto. So I'm very excited to be here today to discuss the emerging and important intersection between grocery e-commerce and the consumer desire to know what's in the products they put in and on their body.
Thanks, Tim. I'm also joined by my colleague, Doug Baker, Vice President of Industry Relations at FMI, who, along with his years of experience as a food retailer, leads FMI's CIO Council and our initiatives with Smart Label. He will be sharing his perspective on the research and what it means for the food industry. Welcome, Doug. can you share with the audience a little bit about FMI, please?
Sure, and thanks for having me, Steve. You know, FMI, as the Food Industry Association, works on behalf of the entire industry to advance a safer, healthier, and more efficient consumer food supply. FMI does this by bringing together a wide range of members across the value chain, from retailers who sell to consumers, to producers who supply the food, as well as the wide variety of companies providing critical services to amplify the collective work of this industry, like Label Insight, and we appreciate their partnership.
Thank you both for joining me today. I'm looking forward to a lively discussion, but before we begin, I need to take a few minutes to cover some important matters. One is to review FMI's antitrust policy. So FMI believes strongly in competition. Our antitrust laws are the rules under which our competitive system operates, and it's our policy to comply in all respects with antitrust laws. Accordingly, it's necessary to avoid discussions on sensitive topics that can create antitrust concerns. If you have any questions or concerns during the webinar, please bring them to our attention via the chat pod or the chat widget. I also want to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded and will be available as an archive program for you to watch or share with your colleagues. Due to the number of participants today, all lines have been muted, so please use the Q&A widget to reach out to us. We will have time at the end of the webinar for questions, so I encourage you to submit your questions using that Q&A widget. Also, if you have any technical issues during the webinar, please use the chat widget to let us know. As we are all working remotely, we hope that you will all please bear with us if there are any technical issues or quality issues during the webinar. So with all those formalities covered, let's take a look at the background for this research. This research builds on research conducted by FMI and Label Insight in 2018, but we also are digging a little bit deeper and also focusing on omnichannel shoppers. And to be clear, when we use the term omnichannel shopper, we're referring to shoppers who shop both online and in-store. We started our research earlier this year by conducting in-depth interviews with omnichannel shoppers and food retailers. And based on the previous research and these interviews, we developed our online survey. The research was conducted March 5th to 20th with a nationally representative sample of 1,000 omnichannel grocery shoppers. The research was conducted in the period just before the COVID-19 pandemic, which means that the respondents are generally free of that emergency mentality that we've all been dealing with as a result of the crisis and the pandemic. The survey that I'm referring to here is the basis for the data that we'll be sharing with you today. And at the end of the webinar, we'll let you know where you can get the full report. Here's a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. And for each of these sections, I'm going to share some of the findings from the survey, and then Doug and Tim are going to provide their insights and perspectives on what we've seen. We'll start off by taking a look at why transparency matters, where we'll explore the importance and meaning of transparency to shoppers. Then we'll take a look at transparency responsibilities, when we'll be exploring who consumers see as responsible for transparency. In the healthy, well, and wise section, we'll take a look at diets and how easy it is for shoppers to know whether a product meets their diet or health goals. In the Omni shopping section, we'll take a closer look at how shoppers are shopping online. And then finally, in the transparency in an online world section, we'll take a look at shoppers' high expectations for transparency when they are shopping online. So that gives you an overview of what we'll be covering. And with that, let's jump right in and take a look at what we have. And we're going to start off with some of the basics. First of all, I want to clarify how we define transparency for the consumers in the survey. We used a very basic definition for shoppers, which was when brands or manufacturers provide detailed information such as what is in their food and how it is made. The question is, does transparency even matter to consumers? The simple answer is yes. Transparency is important in shopping buying decisions for shoppers, but it plays out somewhat differently depending on the shopping platform used, as we're going to see. As I mentioned, survey respondents were presented with a definition of what it means for a brand or manufacturer to be transparent. Again, that is to provide detailed information such as what's in their food and how it is made. And we can see here more than 8 out of 10 shoppers say transparency is important or extremely important, and almost half say it's extremely important to them. Only 4% say transparency is not important. And looking a little bit further, we see that transparency has greater importance to those who are affluent, those who are higher spending shoppers, also among millennials and Gen X shoppers. Next, we want to look at how omnichannel shoppers determine whether a brand or manufacturer is being transparent. There are kind of 3 basic factors here: the ingredients, certifications, and nutrition that come into play. Let's start with ingredients. As we can see, most shoppers consider a brand or manufacturer to be transparent if they provide a complete list of ingredients and or that description is in plain English. So that complete list in simple language is what drives most of them. Shoppers are also looking for more detailed information about ingredients, such as sourcing details, as we can see at 38%, or explanation of what the ingredients are used for. About a third mentioned that. Second is certifications. Almost 1/2 of shoppers, as we see here, 48%, are providing certifications, such as USD Organic, is an indication that a brand or manufacturer is being transparent to them. Then there's all the nutritional information. Many shoppers, almost half, determine transparency based on a brand or manufacturer providing in-depth nutritional information. In addition, some shoppers are looking for information about allergens or product claims such as heart healthy. There's a small but vocal minority out there that are looking for sustainability information. These shoppers look for information about how a product is produced. They also look for value-based information such as animal welfare, fair trade, labor practices, and or other facts about sustainability practices. In general, what are the factors that ultimately influence shoppers when shopping online? As we might expect, shoppers do give top priority to quality and price, but there are other factors they consider as well. Many of these other factors include specific aspects of transparency that are important to omnichannel shoppers in their online shopping purchases. Transparency in ingredients, for one. Knowing the ingredients in a product, 74% say that that's important, along with the sources of ingredients. These are important aspects also. We also see more than 1/2 say information about the presence of allergens is important to them. Then we have transparency in nutrition and benefits. The general nutrition facts, such as the calories, the sugar, the fat, and protein, are important considerations for 73% of online shoppers. And similarly, many place a high level of importance on the health benefits of products. They also prioritize dietary claims such as fat-free, sugar-free, high fiber, and or diet or health-related programs such as keto, paleo, and others of the like. Then there's the where and the how of information. When deciding which products to buy online, more than 1/2 of shoppers say where or how a product is manufactured or grown is important. So with all that, let me ask Doug first of all. We see that transparency is very important to consumers, and we see the important components of transparency to consumers. What's your takeaway from these findings? What do you see as the implications for the food industry, for manufacturers, for food retailers?
Well, yeah, Steve. So, you shared the definition of transparency early on, and although it really sort of varies based on whoever it is you're talking to, you can see from the respondents that transparency remain important, and in my opinion, will continue so even more so in our current environment. With product recalls becoming more prevalent, which is probably more a function of improved capabilities, more so than poor GMPs, increased focus on one's own health, safety, and then heightened focus on environmental and social issues, brands and retailers must consider a strategy that increases their transparency, communication, and engagement with these consumer-related topics as it relates to their brands and their overall business. And let's make sure we consider that there is a strong possibility that consumers will also want to know who touched a product along the supply chain because of the current pandemic. It's not just how is it processed and where is it processed, but we could be facing consumers that are asking the question, who touched it, as it was coming from the field to finally to the table.
Great points, Doug. Thank you. Tim, what are your thoughts on this? What's your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. You know, you mentioned earlier the 2018 report that we did together. And so I thought it'd be interesting to compare, you know, what we found in this study to 2018's transparency imperative. And there's a couple interesting things. One, you know, you had already indicated that transparency is a very, very important to consumers. I think 81% said transparency was either important or extremely important. And comparing that back to 2018, that was 69%. So we're not only seeing this to be very important, we're seeing this to be increasing in importance, as Doug mentioned. You know, the definition over time has stayed relatively consistent, but some components are decreasing in importance as they become more like table stakes. So for example, that list of ingredients back in 2018, 65% of the consumers said that was important. That's down to 62%. On the other hand, there's new components that are increasing. And you mentioned sustainability. So back in 2018, 20% of the consumers thought this was important. And now it's up to 29%. That minority is growing, Steve. But maybe more importantly for this audience, similar, that there's trends that are apparent when you're looking at transparency considerations related to purchasing the product. So not just the definition, but what consumers are considering before they purchase. A couple pretty poignant examples. Back in 2018, 49% of consumers said dietary claims such as fat-free or sugar-free was important or extremely important in their purchase decision. That's up to 58% in 2020. And similarly, the presence of allergens back in 2018, 44% of consumers said that was important in their purchase decision. That's up to 55%. So transparency is clearly top of mind for consumers and something our CPG manufacturers and retailers should really be considering.
Great, Tim. Thank you. I love hearing you use all my research. Love to see that. All right, let's move on to our next section and talk a little about transportation responsibilities. And before we go too far into this, I wouldn't be a good researcher if I didn't include a few poll questions on our webinar. So if we could bring up our first question here. If you guys could help me out by answering this question, we have: what changes in transparency expectations are you observing as a result of the growth of omni-channel grocery shopping? And then we have: shoppers are expecting more transparency from CPG brands. Shoppers are expecting more transparency from retailers. And I haven't observed any changes. So if you guys could take a minute and fill that out, and we'll take a look at what you guys have to say, and then we'll take a look at what our consumers have to say and make a comparison there. So I'll give you another 15 seconds or so to pick an option, and then we'll take a look at what everyone has to say in a second here. Get those votes in quickly. And if we can take a look and see, the answer is, survey says, expecting more from CPG companies, very interesting, but also a number of you saying also retailers. So it sounds like a lot more expecting more, seeing consumers expecting more. So let's jump ahead and let's take a look and see what our consumers had to say. And we can move on and to the next page here. So omni-channel shoppers, as we can see, do have strong opinions about which stakeholders are most responsible for providing that detailed product information, and also about which ones are their most trusted to them, and trust being very important there. So however, the responsibility and the trust levels don't necessarily line up with each other if you look at our data here. If we start by looking at the manufacturers and the government institutions across the top there, we can see most omni-channel shoppers believe that manufacturers and brands, and you guys concurred with this, and along with government institutions like the FDA and USDA, are responsible for providing detailed product information to shoppers about what's in their food, where it's from, and how it was produced. However, we can see that less than 1/2 of the shoppers completely trust the information from manufacturers or brands, 41%, or from government institutions. So there's definitely a gap there. Meanwhile, if we look at farmers, farmers are not as likely to be seen as responsible for providing detailed product information. Only 49% said that they are completely responsible. However, farmers are among the most trusted, as almost all omnichannel shoppers, 95%, express some level of trust in product information from farmers. Meanwhile, if we look at the retailers, we specifically broke out the brick and mortar retailers versus the online retailers. And you can see shoppers express almost identical levels of trust in the information provided by brick and mortar, 93% completely or somewhat trusting, and online grocers. However, if you look at where they place responsibility, they place more responsibility for providing detailed product information on those online grocery retailers versus the brick and mortar grocers. So this is something we'll discuss a little bit further as we continue into our discussion today. Going back to our 2018 research, we saw back then that shoppers often find themselves confused when reading product labels or reading the packaging of products. In our current version of the research, we asked respondents a more in-depth question. We asked respondents about the confusion about ingredients that often leads them to look for alternative products, or do they research details about ingredients online. As we can see here, specifically, there are many shoppers, almost half, when they're confused, would choose to research the ingredients online in the face of confusion. Meanwhile, about one half also will look to another product to see if they understand the ingredients in that product better. And then in 27% we have will simply switch to an alternative product. Meanwhile, there are some folks out there, about 23%, who say they would just accept not understanding the ingredients and they would just simply buy the product. So we have a lot of folks researching and a lot of folks trying to understand what's in their products there. And the food industry has been very proactive about the shopper demands for transparency in recent years. And the Smart Label is a prime example of this. This initiative was created by the Consumer Brands Association and FMI under the industry's Trading Partner Alliance. And Smart Label provides detailed online information for consumers on hundreds of attributes that could never fit on a package label. And it's also accessible to a range of devices and covers ingredients, nutrition, and a whole lot more. And if we look here at the question we asked related to Smart Label, we see that omnichannel shoppers were asked how they would react if a product being considered offered more information online. And we see the vast majority, 89%, would be at least somewhat likely to seek more information this way, and 45% say they'd be very likely to do so. And some of the things that they'd want to learn more about a product they would be likely to seek detailed product information about the ingredients, including things like the ingredients definitions, the definition of the ingredients, 42%, the sources of the ingredients, and production of the ingredients. And if you go further down the list here, many also are interested in more in-depth nutritional information. And again, we have some interest in the allergen information. So Doug, as we look at this, what are your thoughts on where the responsibility for transparency lies? I know you've done a lot of work with Smart Label, and how does a program like Smart Label help with people understanding what's in their products?
Yeah, sure. So I would say probably the simple answer, Steve, is that each of the stakeholders that have been identified have responsibility. You look at the retailer, they sort of they wear two hats, right? So they're a brand owner, they have a private brand program, and that consumer is buying that brand off the shelf. And so they have all the same responsibilities that a consumer product brand has, as well as being a retailer and interacting with the consumer and somewhat being an advocate and helping to educate. So each one of those stakeholders plays a role and has a responsibility. You mentioned Smart Labels. So, as a voluntary industry platform that was built for brand owners to share more information that can be on a package in one central and easy location, right? So today there's just about shy of 76,000 product information pages on Smart Label, sharing more of that information with consumers. And new research with Nielsen, we sort of test the penetration levels of Smart Label, and Nielsen shared with us information last week that the average basket is now made up of over 80% of SKUs that are participating in Smart Label. So, but I think we can all agree that we can't stop at 76,000 SKUs. We need hundreds of thousands, so that no matter where a consumer is at in North America, now that we're in smart label in Canada, no matter what store they're in, what aisle they're on, what package they're looking at, if they want to get information, that it can be delivered to them in a consistent format and feel, which drives that trust, right? So by seeing the same thing over again and seeing it in the same format, it builds a level of trust, and that standardization is extremely important as consumers are looking for information.
Great. Thanks, Doug. So certainly Smart Label helps build that trust for the consumer. Tim, I know so much of what Label Insight does feeds into Smart Label. What's your perspective on how Smart Label fits in and what the responsibility for transparency is?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. Smart Label is a proven platform and a great platform. I think to complement Smart Label, though, which is really an industry initiative that's offering consumers support and consistency. More and more, we're seeing the consumer taking ownership of transparency on their own shoulders to achieve their own personal goals. And I know, back to your research, Steve, FMI did some 2019 research about that really proves this out. The consumers are now, in addition to what the industry is offering them, taking this on their own shoulders. I think that we see this in this study as well. Consumers have an interest in finding out more and more about products online, the ingredients, the sourcing, the nutritional info, et cetera. And food as medicine is a great example. According to some research I found from NPD, the NPD group, 80% of consumers have adopted a food as medicine approach to eating. That was surprising to me. And in addition, 1/4 of US adults are actively trying to manage their health through food by seeking out healthier and more natural foods and cutting out foods they think have a detrimental effect on their long-term health. This is really interesting. Again, tying back to the FMI research from 2019 on the subject, shoppers are making nutrition their own responsibility, but also recognize they have partners in this process. So we've created this ecosystem. And this is really a great opportunity for retailers and brands to build loyalty as a partner in that process, whether that's through Smart Label or other touch points with the consumer.
Great, thank you, Tim. Yes, so let's, with that in mind, we can move on to, as you brought up, health issues, talk a little bit about healthiness, and look at our healthy, well, and wise section and take a look at what consumers are doing there. And as we know, Americans love their diets and their diet fads. Whether health related or based on the latest fad, Americans always seem to be on some type of diet. And as we can see here from our research, this is especially true with the omnichannel shoppers. We saw this in the research 2 years ago, that particularly omnichannel and online shoppers are very much involved in being on diets and their families being on diets. And that's one of the things that often pushes them to be shopping online. As we can see here, almost 2/3 of the omnichannel shoppers, or 64%, are themselves or have someone in their household who's on a diet or some type of health-related program. And further, as we look into the data, we can see that many of these shoppers have multiple diets that their households are shopping for. So it's not always just one diet for those who are on diets that they might be shopping for, others in their household who are adhering to certain diets. If we look at the different diets and programs we ask about on the right there, you can see there are 18 different programs that we ask about in the survey. And we can see some of the more common ones, low sugar, no sugar diets, high protein, low carb, and going down to some of the more specific ones, high fiber, gluten-free, et cetera, heart healthy. And if we look to the bottom of the list, even the bottom of the list there, we can see at least 4% of the shoppers are on one of those types of diets. If you look a little bit further into this section, we see that many shoppers do find themselves searching a product's label or description, or the product's description, to make sure that foods meet the goals of their diets or their health-related programs. We can see 9 out of 10 shoppers buying with a diet in mind always or sometimes are searching a product label. So they're looking for that information. 44% saying they're always doing this. In fact, only 10% rarely or never search a product's label for the description of whether it fits their diet or the program that they're shopping for. In terms of adhering to a diet or program, it can be challenging enough just in and of itself. When it requires locating more information about food products, challenges often increase. As we can see here for omnichannel shoppers, the degree of difficulty varies based on whether they are shopping online or in store. With online actually turning out to be a little more challenging of an experience for these shoppers. We found that more than one half, 53%, say it is either challenging or extremely challenging when shopping online to make sure a product meets their goals for their diet or their diet program. Only 18% found it not challenging. When it comes to in-store, it's easier, but it's not necessarily hassle-free. 43% said it's challenging or extremely challenging in-store to verify the information about a product. And 29% don't find any difficulties. So with that in mind, let's start with Tim this time. We certainly see that Americans love their diets, and we know that they try and have a hard time staying on them. What can the food industry be doing to help consumers stay on these diets and know whether the products they're buying fit their diets and health plans?
Yeah, we all try, don't we, Steve? Yeah, that's a good question. You know, if I look back on that research, I saw a couple things. One, an increasing propensity for diet and sort of health and wellness driven purchase. I saw an increase in consumers actively looking for information, but we also saw that it's difficult. And, you know, bring this to life a little bit. Here's an example of the difficulty that consumers face today. As mentioned earlier, Label Insight tracks the top trending consumer search trends. And then we compare it to the number of products that actually make the claims for which they qualify related to that trend. And here's an example of why it might be difficult for consumers. Ketogenic, or keto, is the 5th most searched for health and wellness attribute across all of grocery categories online. And on Amazon alone, as an example, keto had 750,000 searches last month alone. But 98% of the products that qualify to make that keto claim fail to make it. So in other words, they're invisible for someone searching for keto products. In other words, it's not at all easy for a consumer to access what I would call a robust digital shelf of keto products available to them. Also reflected in the research, we didn't talk about it here, Steve, but the importance of allergens and intolerances, which impact health and wellness. You know, 55% said understanding the presence of allergens is important when shopping online. And I found a study from McKinsey and Northwestern University. 1 in 4 Americans spend $19 billion annually to avoid purchasing a product with the top 9 allergens, like milk, eggs, soy, peanuts. 53% want clear food allergen labeling to identify the presence of these top allergens. But here's an example, and this is a very personal example I did yesterday of some of the challenges. I'd encourage the listeners to do this on their own, maybe after the webinar. Just yesterday, I went to Amazon and I searched for egg-free on Amazon Grocery. And 25 of the page 1 search results were cartons of eggs. Now, of course, a person with egg allergies most probably won't be buying cartons of eggs. But I think that example really underscores the difficulties experienced by the online shopper. And I think, you know, for me, this is a call to action for the brands and the grocery retailers to really put that shopper experience as a strategic top of mind imperative.
Great, Tim. Thank you. I know that search function often comes up with interesting things when I use it, so not surprising. So Doug, how do you think food retailers and manufacturers might help consumers here in terms of staying healthy and well and knowing what's in their food?
Yeah, and Steve, I'd just like to add one more data point. You know, our FMI Trends report from 2019 showed that overwhelmingly 73% of consumers believe they are themselves responsible for their own nutrition. With that said, they're looking for trusted advisors to help them with this activity, and the retailer and brands are those trusted advisors. Additionally, if you were to do your research of your own, and we've actually done this on a project with Smart Label, is we looked at how many apps were out there that utilized nutritional information from brands, from private brands, and it is up of 300,000 apps that are using nutritional information. Unfortunately, today, many of those third-party apps are also causing confusion for consumers because the data used is not complete and/or accurate. Because the data is used to populate those apps is typically scraped off of a package or collected through crowdsourcing, there can be issues with version control and outdated information. So, you know, that's one thing that we need to really consider as brand owners, is that consumers are looking for trusted advisors. They're looking for data. And if they're going to be accessing our data through third-party filters, then we at least want to make sure that they're getting accurate data, because at the end of the day, the brand, the retailer are the ones that are going to feel the pain of that if it's inaccurate. You know, as consumers continue to make more responsibility in an effort to eat healthier for overall health, and retailers and brands have the opportunity to be one of those trusted advisors to consumers. As an example, some of the things that I think are happening that are pretty neat. You know, retailers are starting to add dietitians to store staffs. Some are providing their own apps to assist consumers in making alternative choices based on an item they scan. And some are offering recipes. Well, everybody's offering recipes, but the neat thing is that as you're reviewing that recipe, they're also giving them the opportunity to move that to a list, and then in some instances to a shopping list. These were very important attributes to consumers with some fit for commerce research that we did last year in 2019 as well. But, you know, in the spirit of this conversation on transparency, both building a dialogue with consumers, whether physically or digitally, and sharing more information to assist them when making decisions on what they plan to buy, to use, or consume is extremely important, and one that's not going to go away. So we need to continue to look for those methods to help them find the answers that they're looking for more efficiently.
Great, great. Thank you both for those insights. And I thought I was supposed to be bringing all the data and numbers here. You guys definitely did your homework here with some of that data and information. So thank you. Let's go a little bit deeper now into the online world and talk a little bit about shoppers' online shopping experiences. And if we see, as we see here, before the pandemic, online grocery shopping was growing in 2019 at a nice 40% increase, as we can see based on our U.S. grocery shopper trends research at FMI. Then obviously, as we all know, the pandemic came, and in just 1 month, online grocery shopping sales almost doubled. This growth has obviously resulted in a renewed focus on online shopping. So let's take a little closer look in terms of what's happening in the online shopping world. Let's start off looking at how long folks have been shopping for. As we see, some shoppers are newbies, as I say, to online grocery shopping, and others are more experienced. Coming into the pandemic, when we did this research, almost half of the online shoppers that we came across had started online shopping in just the past year. And in fact, about a quarter of them had started in just the past 6 months. And this proportion of newbies to online shopping has definitely grown during the pandemic, and it's probably grown quite dramatically. As we look here on the right, why do shoppers turn to online grocery shopping? Some basic explanations from our survey, the survey leading up to the pandemic time. You can see a number of motivations here. The two most common mentions are reasons that involve easing the burden on life for us. As we can see, convenience is number one, and saving time is number two. We often ask the question, does marketing work? And as food retailers have been making efforts to market their online grocery shopping offerings, omnichannel shoppers definitely acknowledge that discounts and coupons, along with advertising and promotions, often have driven their first online grocery experience. We can see here that some shoppers are influenced to start online shopping by specific life events, things like an illness, car issues, new baby. And we can probably add a pandemic to that list now, as our life events have definitely been influenced and has impacted us in terms of our online grocery shopping. There's more to online grocery shopping than just which products are purchased. Shoppers use a variety of devices and buying approaches when they're making their online purchase decisions. As we can see here with all the data on this page, we have online grocery shoppers almost as likely to use a smartphone as they are a computer or laptop, and many also using a tablet. And we also find that many of them use multiple devices for their online grocery shopping. When it comes to online shopping, it can be unique and different from in-store shopping, and then it can be done in one sitting or over several days. We found that about 2/3 of shoppers actually finish their online shopping in one sitting, but about 1/3 of them kind of build up their orders over time before submitting them, and kind of keep them on hold there, and then build their shopping orders up. While food retailers don't, as we know, get the highest ratings for their e-commerce platforms, many food retailers have added new or enhanced features to the online shopping platforms. We found that a majority of shoppers acknowledge that the food retailers that they're shopping have gotten either a lot better or at least somewhat better since they first began online shopping in terms of their platforms. And as we look at what shoppers use in terms of their online platform features here on the right, the most utilized feature is search. More than 1/2 of the shoppers use this feature when it's available to them. Another 1/3 use it at least occasionally. And I'll let Tim and Doug in a few minutes comment on the issues with search functionality. Other frequently used features are the ability to explore product details, such as nutrition facts, ingredients, and other information, and opportunity to zoom in on the package. A lot of shoppers are also seeking deals online, with many using digital coupons and digital promotions. Most shoppers take advantage of product reviews when they are available, and list building tools when they're available when shopping online. And then we find shoppers often use filters for attributes such as claims, allergens, and diets. In our qualitative research, however, we found that many of the online grocery shoppers were not even aware or often frustrated by a lot of these filters. So that often results in that usage of the filters lagging behind that from other shopping features. If we look at some of the reasons that shoppers like and dislike online shopping, if we start on the left side with the likes, we can see survey respondents cited a range of reasons why they like grocery shopping online, with aspects such as convenience and speed topping the list. When it comes to convenience, shoppers cite benefits such as saving travel time, enabling fast and easy checkout process, which is a real pet peeve with in-store shopping, and delivery opportunities. Also, shoppers note one of the likes of online shopping is that they can avoid human contact. And this was something they mentioned before the pandemic, and it's certainly likely that this consideration is even more important in the wake of the current pandemic. On the dislike side, we can see Omni shoppers point to limitations and fees as just some of the myriad elements of what they dislike about online shopping. When it comes to product selection, online shopping had primarily in the past been for center store and non-food categories, and shoppers have been hesitant to allow others to pick their fresh vegetables and meats and fruits. Thus, the most frequently mentioned dislike when it comes to online shopping is that inability to choose one's own produce, meat, seafood, or other fresh types of items. Some shoppers similarly cite the inability to evaluate products as a downside. Fees also come in play. Many food retailers waive their fees for orders over a certain amount. Not all do so. And whether it's a reality or a perception, some omnichannel shoppers cite high delivery fees as a negative aspect of online shopping. Customer service is also an issue when shopping online. Some shoppers point to the difficulty in returning things and the lack of immediate customer service when it's challenges when they're shopping online. Delivery issues. Some sites negative experience such as slow delivery, unsatisfactory delivery, broken items, poor packaging, etc. And we know from our other research that delivery has particularly been an issue during the pandemic, being able to get delivery windows and delivery in a timely manner. The user experience, we also see here the user experience with food retailer online platforms has been another frequently mentioned dislike when it comes to online grocery shopping. Unsatisfactory issues include the inability to find products based on their preferences, poor and inaccurate search results. Again, the search engines come up there, and poor user experiences or interfaces. So I covered a lot of information there when it comes to the online shopper experience, but Tim, how do you think online shopping will continue to evolve and change in terms of how we shop for groceries?
Yeah, great question, Steve. Sort of as an aside, it's sort of funny to me that so many consumers wanted to avoid human contact even before COVID. Maybe that's a topic for another webinar. But yeah, so absolutely, the pandemic is accelerating online grocery. I think that's an understatement. Based on this data, in March and April, online grocery represented 27.9% of all grocery. But But since then, it's just exploded. To bring it to life, there's a great study that I'd recommend to the listeners from Mercatus and Bricks Meet Clicks. It's an online grocery scorecard, a monthly scorecard. In June 2020, online grocery revenue reached $7.2 billion. And to put that in perspective, less than a year ago in August 2019, that was 1.2 billion. So it's almost a six-fold increase in less than a year. And in terms of active users, last month in June, there were 46 million active online grocery customers. That means they were active in the last 30 days. That's up from 16 million, again, less than a year ago in August. So just astounding growth. It was interesting to me, some of the data we captured around why they started online shopping: convenience, saving time. Since the research, obviously there's new adoption drivers related to health concerns and maybe adjusted work-life balance. But I think this move to online has been anticipated for some time. We heard this a lot from our retail customers. And in fact, I think it comes to life really well in this quote from Walmart CEO Doug McMillon. He described it this way, quote, "This is just speeding up the significant change the retail industry was already undergoing. Before this crisis, we were already seeing robust adoption of online pickup and delivery in our business." And the last thing I want to share, Steve, related to the features, you referred to search being the most important feature. I think this is probably driven by the use of the small screen, where search, 61% are using their smartphone, and search is great for that small screen environment. But there are challenges. As described earlier in my Amazon egg-free example, it's oftentimes less than optimal. But here's another example. So we just completed a site audit of a top 3 retail customer of ours and found out that there were big gaps in their digital shelf. In other words, the product selection that comes back based upon the top attributes that consumers are searching for is pretty immense. What we found was searches on their digital shelf could have returned 21 times as more products than they did. So that's thousands of additional products for consideration and conversion. But they didn't return those due to the product information gaps and user experience gaps. So big opportunity. And Steve, you mentioned the frustration. This example really connects the dots for me between the consumer preferences and the satisfaction we see in this research.
Yes, so true. Search is both one of the most important things and the most frustrating things. Doug, what are your thoughts in terms of how online shopping is going to continue to evolve?
Well, if you think about it, you guys both talked about the explosion of e-commerce. It's really not been a surprise by anybody, but if you put some numbers against it, before COVID-19, we were averaging anywhere from 3 to 5% total store sales. And now we're looking at, between 20 to 25%. And at the end of January, FMI with our partner Nielsen, we've been working on that digitally engaged food shopper research for 4 years now. We came out at the end of January and said that, which was a reforecast, and said that we would see food online reach 143 billion by 2025. I think it's pretty obvious we're going to have to look at that number again, and that would be the 3rd time we visited this number because the acceleration just continues to speed up. I think it's safe to say that we won't go back to 3 to 5%. We probably won't stay at 20 to 25. So we need to understand where we're at in there. If you think about it, consumers out of matter of necessity, and you showed a slide that showed that convenience was primary. So it was convenience, but during COVID-19 and where we're at right now, for some, it's a matter of necessity. And so whether they were adverse to using technology or they were intimidated by the process, they now at least understand and have experience using an e-commerce platform, which is going to make it much easier for them to re-engage in that after COVID and when it's convenient for them. There's several benefits that the digital environment can provide to improve the shopping experience. There's also significant opportunities. An example of what you mentioned is, the research stated that list building tools was used under just under 70% of the time. So, I'm sure that numbers probably increased as consumers are planning now very purposeful trips, either online or even more so in store, because they don't want to be in the store for very long. And as mentioned earlier, retailers can assist by aiding consumers when they take those lists and or recipes that they're sharing with them online and move them directly to the basket, making it more efficient and taking one of the steps out of the process. We also need to consider, how voice assistants will continue to evolve and how technologies like visual AI will play a role in both providing more information, whether you're in the store or sitting on your couch at home, as well as transacting if you're in the store simply by pointing your smartphone at a product. I think technology is, we've seen it accelerate and speed up as a platform to aid innovation. And I think that's just going to continue to accelerate. And let's not forget the newest generation, our Zs, that are starting to have more spending power. They like to be on their technology while shopping in the store. So whether they're purchasing something while they're already in the store purchasing, or they're looking up information while they're shopping, or they're engaging in social media activities, talking about the things they're seeing, they use that technology actively while they're in the store and doing their shopping. So that's something else we're going to have to really pay attention to.
Technology is changing so fast. And speaking of technology, let's move on to our last section here. We're going to look at transparency in the online world specifically. And of course, I have to have at least one more poll question in here. So before we jump into this last section, we have one more poll question for you, if you would please. How has COVID-19 pandemic affected your focus on the online shopping experience versus in-store? So if you could choose between, we've increased our focus on online due to the pandemic, our focus on online has not changed, we've increased our focus on in-store due to the pandemic, and then our focus on in-store has not changed. If you guys could make your choices among those four options in terms of how you're looking at things, and then we'll take a look at how everyone measures up and how that compares to our last choices here. Yes, and just to be clear, everyone, you can choose multiple options here. It's not just a one choice. So we're not limiting you to one choice as you look through the choices here. So let's take a look at the results here and see where everyone stacks out. Whoa, okay, so we're very much, not surprising if you're interested in this webinar probably, but you're definitely increasing the online focus in terms of as a result of the pandemic. That's definitely the leader there at 74%. All right, so let's take a look at our last section here and talk a little bit about transparency in that online world. And as we can see, we ask folks to compare in-store with online in terms of how they operate and are able to do things. And we can see omni-channel grocery shoppers find some transparency related activities easier online than in-store. We start off with discovering new products. It's just as easy or easier online than in-store for most shoppers, 80%. Only 25% find it harder to discover products online. So maybe using the search engine is working at least to some degree to help better than in-store. In terms of product stories, the same large majority of shoppers said that learning more about a product story is just as easy or easier online compared to in-store. And that includes things such as information about sourcing and the manufacturing processes of products. If we look at shopping for specific diets or allergies, it's also something that many shoppers find easier or just as easy online compared to in-store. About 80% fall into those two categories. And then finally, shoppers are a little divided in terms of whether it's easier or harder to identify information about ingredients and nutrition online compared to in-store. So a little more divided in terms of that. And if we look at this last couple questions here, we see that there's definitely a greater desire though, even though it might be easier, there's definitely greater desire for information when shopping online. Product transparency is more important when the shoppers are buying online versus in-store. And we can see with these two statements we asked folks about, the majority of shoppers want more information about a product when shopping online. 69% agreed with that. And similarly, most online omnichannel shoppers, 63% agreed that being able to get information about a product is more important when shopping online than when shopping in store. So Doug, shoppers clearly want more when it comes to transparency when they are shopping online. Why do you think this is, and what can retailers be doing to help meet this need of consumers for that extra information?
Well, I would say probably inherently when you're online, you understand that you sort of have the world at your fingertips. And so it should be, there should be more information that's more easily available to you in an online format. It seems to be that it's a matter of time and function though, right? So when you're online, you have the tools to research and the time to do so. And when consumers are in the store, they sort of have this built-in expectation of how long they want to take shopping. And although they might have that tool in their hand and their device to do the research, that eats into their time equation to get through the store and out, so they don't make the effort to do so. And this again is an opportunity for retailers and brands to assist consumers with a fast and efficient platform to access more information than can ever fit on a label. And that'll be my final plug for Smart Label. You know, again, it was built to be that industry platform so consumers would be able to access more information than ever can fit on a label and efficiently, whether it be, you know, scanning a QR code, scanning the app, and, you know, down the road through visual AI. You know, it's about giving them the tools and making them easy and efficiently for them to access that information. And technology is where it's at. And, you know, as an industry, we need to continue to embrace that.
Great, Doug. Tim, what would you like to see retailers do to meet this need among shoppers for more transparency when they are shopping online?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, Steve, that, you know, this research, as we keep referring, was fielded pre-pandemic and sort of had a different lens on transparency in the online world. You know, really, from one perspective, this pandemic has led to this intersection of increased grocery e-commerce with less predictable inventory. And one place where we're hearing from our customers this is having an impact is whereas shopping is being done by an intermediary who's basically choosing products on behalf of the end consumer. In other words, you know, out of stocks have increased the number of replacements coming to consumers through pickup and delivery services that don't meet their needs. And, you know, prior to pandemic, you know, this research told us that consumers were wary of not being able to choose their own fresh products. But I think this is now extending to other products as well, because it's not a great experience. In fact, back to some outside research, in Mercatus and Bricks and Clicks, they did a shopper satisfaction survey, and satisfaction with online pickup and delivery dropped from 80% satisfied in 2019 to right around 50% in April and May of 2020. And so that's a big impact. And, you know, in that research, consumers were tying this likeliness to maybe try a new provider, a new retailer, to a number of things, including discontent with out of stocks and replacement items. And, you know, to bring this home with an example for myself, here's a sort of a surprising quote unquote health and wellness example that I experienced around ice cream. So did an online purchase for Halo Top ice cream. My daughter wanted it. Not sure if you're familiar with this, but apparently this is low cal, low sugar, vegan, high protein, keto, non-dairy, and apparently still qualifies as ice cream. But anyway, so we ordered this, but we received Haagen-Dazs, which I guess is really the opposite of most of those statements. And so there's winners and losers defined by customer experience. This was not a great one for us, although I did end up eating the Haagen-Dazs myself. But what this translates into, I think, is big opportunities for both brands and retailers. You know, that 74% increased focus on online. I think recommendations and replacements and making sure that consumers are filling their baskets through intermediaries in ways that meet their need states. This is a really, really big opportunity.
Great point. Now you're making me hungry in the middle of the afternoon here. So ice cream sounds good. All right. Let's thank you both for those insights. And real quickly, I'm just going to point out the sections that we covered here today. And actually, I think I'm going to go ahead and slide past this section. And I want to have an opportunity just for a couple quick questions and answers as we approach the top of the hour here, and throw a couple questions that we've had come in. First of all, Doug, if we could get you to maybe respond to this one, and Tim, certainly you can pipe right in. But in terms of your opinion on transparency post-COVID, in the post-COVID world, what do you think will continue to be important to consumers as we move forward in this post-COVID world?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, you know, table stakes, Steve, as we've been talking. You know, some of the challenges in the environment that we live in today is that there's information coming at us from so many different directions, from so many different sources. It's really sort of hard to sift through it all. And so consumers are going to be looking for those transparent advisors, those people and those organizations and brands that they can trust, that is giving them the type of information that they're looking for and that is reputable in their mind. Chain of custody, I think, is going to be extremely important on products as it moves through the supply chain. I mentioned earlier, understanding how it flowed and who touched it. I think those things just continue to be more and more important, simply because of our current situation, but it was before, and we will get back to what we might consider the new normal, but it'd be relatively close to the previous normal as it relates to transparency. It's going to be expected.
Great. Thank you, Doug. So we've reached the top of the hour here, and our email addresses are up there, and we certainly can address questions. And potentially, if you do have any questions, please reach out to us. I saw a couple questions about different aspects of the data. We can certainly look at the data different ways. But I will let you know that we will get back to you. Those who have submitted questions, we will try and get back to you with those questions and share those out with everybody. Thank you both, Tim and Doug, for sharing your insights today, and to everyone for attending the webinar. As a reminder, the presentation was recorded and will be available for viewing at your convenience or for sharing with others. After the webinar, you will receive an email with a link to the webinar recording. And also the report is available on the FMI store. You can see the email, the website here, fmi.org. You can download it there. And thank you all, and have a great afternoon, and stay safe and healthy.